And so another Premier League season comes to an end, with a historical four-peat for Manchester City never been done before. Today we're going to take a look back through the season, some of the most iconic, hilarious and ridiculous moments from this Premier League campaign, and see how we ended up with this picture right here. Starting at the very beginning of this season, Luton Town came up into the Premier League alongside Sheff United and Burnley, with many thinking if any of these teams were staying up, it would be Burnley because of how impressive they were in the Championship. And the season started off with a bang with VAR controversy in the opening match week as Andre Onana, on his Premier League debut, clatters into a Wolves player and no penalty is given. The first of many decisions to go against Wolves this season, resulting in them presenting a letter to the Premier League saying VAR should be scrapped. The infamous Luis Diaz offside goal kicked off more controversy with VAR. It really isn't a good start to the season for him, is it? This was in September, where he is completely onside, but they stuck with the on-field decision sort of by accident and said that he was offside because that's what the linesman gave and this goal did not count. It resulted in audio of the VAR and everybody involved and their discussions regarding the goal and them swearing at the end of it, basically knowing that they slightly messed up. We saw Ange Postecoglou come in with his new tactics into the Premier League of attack, defend very, very high, which resulted in this incredible photo of their game against Chelsea, which they went on to lose 4-1. Nicholas Jackson scoring a hat-trick in one of the worst Premier League hat-tricks of all time. He underperformed his XG while scoring a hat-trick against a team with 9 men that were playing on the halfway line for the last half an hour of the game. Tributes were paid to Sir Bobby Charlton, who sadly passed away during this season, in some beautiful scenes on not just Man United, but football in general. Everton were given their first points deduction of the season and had all of these cards held up at the ground saying that the Premier League is corrupt and that they shouldn't have been punished. This, of course, was the first of multiple point deductions that happened in the Premier League in the season just gone, and there's going to be more coming in the future, including, sadly, us next season. A terrifying moment where Luton against Bournemouth had to be abandoned as Tom Lockyer collapsed on the pitch for the second time. Obviously in the playoff final this happened as well, and he has since been fitted with a device and has been pivotal in trying to teach the importance of CPR and defibrillators and things like that, even going on things like the overlap. And just praise to medical staff at not just this incident but around football grounds all over the country. They need more praise for the amount of incidents that they actually save lives in. Rebecca Welsh became the first female referee in Premier League history in a huge moment for not just her, but the league and the sport in general. This is such a big thing. We've seen the growth of women's football, especially in England with the success of the Lionesses in the Euros and World Cup, but to see officials now getting these higher status roles and things like that is a really, really good step going forward, especially because people moan about the refs in this country all the time. There's probably some absolutely amazing, high-level female officials that deserve their position. De Bruyne marked his long-awaited return from injury with an absolute masterclass, coming on against Newcastle and providing an amazing goal and an exquisite assist to Oscar Bobb, who finished it fantastically in order to get that win. This was potentially a huge moment in Man City winning the entire title, with him coming back from that long-sustained injury. Speaking of returns, we also saw Ivan Toney be hailed as he returns to Brentford following his long ban due to betting rule breaches. This was still an odd one, as he was hailed as if like he'd been hard done by the club and the media and everything, when in reality he broke some rules and then served his punishment and came back. Crystal Palace fans were boycotting in February as it was not going well for them. Turns out, this actually worked out really well. They brought in Oliver Glasner, and my goodness, what a team they turned into for the rest of the season. He turned Mateta into R9 for a few months. The man's a genius. There was a whole saga regarding Rashford throughout this season, with multiple instances of him not turning up to training. He was pictured in nightclubs before big sessions and things like that. And the Ten Hag controversy with him and kicking off with players and stuff just kept growing throughout the season. Another Premier League manager that couldn't quite get things right this year, David Moyes, is leaving West Ham at the end of the season and announced it a little bit in advance to 50-50 replies from West Ham fans. And we also had the massive news in January that Klopp was going to be leaving at the end of the season. He has now had his Anfield farewell as they played their last game of the season and started singing about the new manager and everything like that. It was beautiful. Arsenal were running riot this season. They were looking absolutely fantastic. Spent a good chunk of the league at the top, with Declan Rice being pivotal the entire season and Kai Havertz turning up in the second half of the year to really show why they paid so much money. A huge win for Everton later in the season against Liverpool in the Merseyside derby basically confirmed that they were going to be staying in the league. This followed them and Nottingham Forest receiving more point deductions in these unprecedented scenes. Old Trafford was falling apart recently and just shows Man United have got a lot of rebuilding to do in the summer. Not just with their squad, but maybe their stadium. Nottingham Forest basically called the Premier League corrupt, with Mark Clattenburg being appointed their referee consultant, backing these claims and then stepping down about a week later. All very, very interesting. I'd like to see whether they have considered their options since this tweet went out. Phil Foden wins the player of the season and goes on to win Manchester City the Premier League with 2 incredible goals at the end of the campaign. And it all ended up with the title looking like this. Manchester City sit atop for the 4th year in a row, something no club has ever done before. Arsenal just falling short despite a fantastic 2024 campaign. And the gap between the top 3 and 4th spot is huge. But Aston Villa have managed to get themselves Champions League football, which is just incredible. Fair play to Unai Emery. Tottenham Hotspur finishing 5th, and Chelsea managing to finish above Newcastle and Manchester United despite the start to their season under Pochettino, with all of these crazy transfers not seeming very good. They won their last 5 games in a row. They really look a lot better. They've found form at the right time, and it's meant that they've got themselves back into Europe. Nottingham Forest and Everton survived this season despite their big point deductions, and Luton Town, Burnley and Sheffield United are the first triplet of promoted teams to get relegated in quite a long time. Nottingham Forest end the season with a low point total, but do manage to survive. So a little bit lucky there. Brentford in and around it towards the end of the season. The return of Ivan Toney didn't quite work out as well as they would have hoped. Whereas teams like Bournemouth and Palace, that at times in the season looked like they could be in trouble, Dominic Solanke going absolutely huge, and Glasner completely changing things for Palace. I will be doing another video where I review every team's season in a tier list, but you'll have to wait for that one. For now, as a part of review of the season in this incredible, what was a 3-way title race at times, the European race was great, relegation battle was great, let's do my own Premier League awards. And we're going to start off with Player of the Season and Young Player of the Season. Let's not waste any time. We're putting them both together. In my world, you do not only win the Premier League Player of the Season and then someone else wins the Young Player of the Season, as Cole Palmer did, somehow. If you're the best player in the league and you also qualify for the best young player in the league, you're winning both for me, and that is going to Phil Foden. To me, up until this season, he's actually been a little bit overhyped by the media, by commentators and stuff like that. He's had moments, but he's not had campaigns where he has truly shown that his flashes of ability can be consistent enough to be elite amongst the elite of Man City. He's been the glue this season with Kevin De Bruyne out for massive periods of the season, other players getting injured. Phil Foden has stepped up to the plate, a ridiculous amount of goal involvements. He has been amazing. Next up, we'll go with goal of the season, and I normally prefer ridiculously good team goals and stuff like that rather than a worldie. However, this is probably the craziest reaction I've had to a goal whilst watching it with my dad in a long time. This was absolutely phenomenal by Garnacho. Clears Rooney's any day of the week. That overrated shinner of a shot. Garnacho with an unbelievable overhead kick. Has to go to him. For signing of the season, I feel there were a few contenders. Declan Rice, for example, has been amazing for Arsenal this year. You also have some players that came in January that have really transformed some teams, like Adam Wharton. Fantastic player for Palace. But I am going to go with Cole Palmer. He has single-handedly carried Chelsea for the vast majority of the season. And everyone knew that he had talent at Man City. But for him to have the guts to basically say, I'm good enough to be playing now. If you aren't going to be playing me, I would like to leave. Going to someone like Chelsea and being their talisman in your first season in the Premier League where you are starting week in, week out, it's incredible. And people will talk about his penalties and stuff like that, but you clearly don't watch him play if you don't think that he's been incredible. Some of his link-up play, his movement, his passing range and things like that. This guy is an absolute baller, and I'm so excited to see how Poch can keep taking him further forward, especially with other players returning from injury like Nkunku. It's going to be really entertaining. Now, when talking about flop of the season, there are a few that people will immediately jump to. Calvin Phillips is one because he just has not played well at all. Got that loan move to West Ham and stunk the place out. Someone as expensive as Mason Mount ending up not playing most of the season due to injury, and then when he did play, flattering to deceive. But instead, I'm actually going to go for Matheus Nunes at Manchester City. Partially because they spent a lot of money on him, but also because of how highly Pep spoke of him. Basically saying he's like one of the best players on the ball that he's seen for the last couple of years. And then he's not really been able to break into the squad properly. Now, one thing that does have to be said is there are a fair few players that when it comes to Manchester City and Pep, they do take a year to settle. Grealish's first season was not that great. Second season, phenomenal, right? One of the main reasons why they won the treble. He was incredible. But you have had other players that have come in and really shown their worth. For example, Haaland smashed it straight away. Julian Alvarez, to an extent, done really, really well. Doku, not as much. Gvardiol this season, by the end of the year, has now become one of the first names on the team sheet. Fantastic defending, but also going forward, he's been huge. Some goals and assists in big, big games this season. Whereas Matheus Nunes, even despite the injury problems that they've had in midfield and things like that, he just hasn't taken his opportunities to really impress. He's had a couple of games where he's looked better than at other times, but in general, I think that he is probably the biggest letdown compared to the build-up. And then finally, the player that I am most excited to see in the Premier League next season is Abdul Fatawu, of course, my baller. But I thought it would be fun to just do a little bit of a review of the Premier League this season by looking back at some of the biggest and most influential moments that there were. We've got multiple other videos planned that are coming your way. They're going to be filling the screen right now with the video titles that are on their way. So hopefully you enjoyed this fun little look back at what has been a fantastic season. I hope you enjoyed for more content. I will see you very soon for another one. Goodbye.